How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. This is from 1987 and is directed by Lee Harry, who is also the writer and the editor. We'll get more into the editor thing in a little bit. And this quite famously stars Eric Freeman as Billy's little brother Ricky. And I guess right off the bat we have to acknowledge this is a so bad it's good movie. A lot of people note it for the Garbage Day clip where Ricky is going on a rampage and he shoots someone taking out the garbage and quite famously says, "Garbage Day!" and shoots the guy down. And a lot of people know it for just that one scene, or rather that one 15 or so second clip. But there's a lot more to it than that. Even just the Garbage Day clip comes from a longer scene that begins with someone's head getting exploded and ends with a car explosion. You know, there's a lot more to this movie in the so bad it's good category than people give it credit for. There's a lot of funny moments, and the whole time Ricky's on screen, it's a big over-the-top performance. And any little line, "I guess we're just wasting time here," it's all delivered in that Garbage Day voice. And it is really funny. You know, the internet honed in on that one clip, but there's a whole lot more to it where Ricky's just being an intense guy that feels like he's about to explode at any minute. But all that being said, I do want to take a quick moment to remind people the first Silent Night, Deadly Night is actually a really good movie. Not only is it a good slasher with great kills and great slasher moments, it has a really important meaning behind it. The idea that we want to preserve peace, so we create punishment, but then punishment is violent, and people get caught up with punishment. They get caught up with violence, and they destroy the peace that punishment was designed to protect. So punishment in the first movie is seen as a self-defeating cycle, and it's a really important message, and not enough people talk about the importance of the first Silent Night, Deadly Night movie. And it's a really good film. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's a really good movie. And then we got the sequel. Now, the first movie did set up that Ricky would be the killer at the end, and you could have gone on and talked about themes of repeating violence, and you really could have had a good Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, and part of me really wishes that we did have that. However, we got a so bad it's good movie, and I do like the cheesy elements of it. It's just a large part of me goes, what if they did this right? But the cheesy elements are over the top, they are fun, and it definitely is worth watching the second half of this movie. And I guess that's what we got to get into next, is the first half of this movie is just a shortened, chopped down version of the first Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's all reused stock footage. It's the first movie, but chopped up to only be 40 minutes or so long. So that is one thing we got to talk about. Now, in a modern world where I can just pop on the first Silent Night, Deadly Night whenever I want to, it does seem kind of odd to use this much old footage. But what we need to remember about the world when this movie came out, home media wasn't as prevalent as it is nowadays. And in turn, using old footage was much more common, because if you do a sequel, it might have been a year since people saw the first one, and they might not remember, and they might not have access because, like I said, home media wasn't as big of a thing. So the idea to use old footage to catch the audience up was quite common, but also led to a lot of low-budget features putting in a lot of old footage to pad out the runtime, and is quite often seen as a cheap move if you did it too much. Think Hills Have Eyes Part 2, which wasn't feature-length, so they padded it out with shots from Hills Have Eyes Part 1. That was a common thing, and that's what I thought happened with this movie at first, But I looked it up, and it's actually kind of an interesting story. This movie, why there's so much old footage, is because this movie was originally a different project. You know how I mentioned the director is also the editor? He was hired to make a new cut of Friday the 13th Part 1. Not Friday the 13th, Silent Night, Deadly Night. He was hired to make a new cut of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1, and they said, shoot the Ricky segments where he's telling the story from the Part 1, that'll be enough new stuff to get people in, and then other than that, just play the original movie. But the guy who directed this really wanted to make a more true sequel. Now, I'm not sure if the original project, if that was going to be marketed as a re-release or if it was going to be marketed as a sequel, but the director wanted to make a sequel. So even though he didn't have much budget, he went out and he shot a whole bunch of new scenes, and in turn we get half the original project and half the project the director wanted to make, and I kind of wish this was all a new movie. You know, Ricky's stuff is such big, over-the-top, and cheesy, it's really too bad he only gets half a movie. Now, I kind of lucked out where the last time I saw Part 1 was last year for Christmas, and in turn, it wasn't as fresh in my head, so a lot of people, when they see Part 2, I mean, like, look at this, it's on a double pack with Part 1, a lot of people will watch Part 1 and then go right into Part 2, and this is definitely a movie you don't want to watch back-to-back with the first one, or you'll feel like you're just sitting through a truncated version of stuff you just saw. You know, there are movies like Halloween 1 and 2, where you definitely want to watch those back-to-back. They flow right into each other. This is a movie you definitely don't want to watch back-to-back with the first one, unless you're just ready to fast-forward through a lot of it. And I know a lot of people do that. You know, they're like, if I want to see Part 1, I'll watch Part 1. I want to see Part 2, let's just fast forward through this. And you do get a lot of stuff in the movie where it's just the same thing, you know. You get Ricky talking a little bit, and every now and then they try to intercut him, but there's really not enough to make it, you know, a whole new watch, you know. It really is just footage from the first part. And you do get a few things with this. Every now and then there's something I'm like, why didn't they keep that? Like, they cut out the grandpa scene from Part 1, where he talks to Billy and no one else, and I'm like, that was one of the best scenes from Part 1, and they chose to cut it out. I couldn't believe that, you know, of all the stuff to cut. But also, it's, as a lot of people have said, a lot more than you really need for a recap, a lot of stuff that doesn't have any play into Part 2. But also a lot of stuff that Billy wouldn't know. Stuff when he was a baby that, you know, people had to have told him, but he goes, I know it because I was there. No, you know it because someone told you. You don't remember when you were a baby. Maybe he does, I don't know. But there's also stuff that he wasn't there for. A lot of it is from Billy's perspective, so Ricky simply couldn't have known any of this. But I'm guessing he had to have heard it all later, so there is a lot of that. But we do eventually get new stuff with Ricky, but the thing with that, too, is it's still a flashback. You know, Ricky's still at the end of the movie, so it is still flashback, but it's at least new flashback. But the other big flaw with this movie is the new flashback stuff is mostly not Christmas. And if this is Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, I expect Christmassy things, and for the most part, this really isn't Christmassy. So, there is that. You know, you get the old stuff, which is Christmassy, but a lot of the new stuff isn't until we get to the final act, the last 15 or so minutes of this movie. It really isn't super Christmassy until then, and I really wish that they could have just rewrote a lot of Ricky's older core memories to take place in Christmas time. It really wouldn't be that hard. Just say this took place around Christmas and have people in Christmas outfits and put up decorations, but they really don't until the end, so this really doesn't feel super Christmassy. All that being said, let's go ahead and talk a bit about that plot in more detail. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but but I do want to say my piece on a few of the plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what this movie's about. We open up with Ricky in prison. We don't know what he did, we don't know why he's there, but he's in prison and this doctor comes in with a tape recorder and is going to take down Ricky's story, which leads into him telling the entirety of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1. So let's go ahead and skip past that. We do eventually get to Ricky's new story, and we find out that after all that controversy, the orphanage was shut down, but the good younger nun did get Ricky to a family, so he did have someone, and he did have a happy portion of his life. Now, one thing they do here is they give Ricky to a Jewish family because Ricky is easily triggered if he sees nuns, if he sees Christmassy things, you know, it triggers him. So they give him to a family that doesn't celebrate Christmas, and the movie kind of plays it like a joke, but it really is a good idea. If Christmas triggers this guy, don't give him to someone who celebrates Christmas. It really is a good idea. And now that being said, kind of another one of the movie's wasted opportunities, you know. The first Silent Night, Deadly Night is a Christmas movie. Wouldn't it have been cool if the sequel was a Hanukkah movie? That would have been interesting. It would have still felt winter festive, but it would have been different. Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, 8 Deadly Nights. That could have been really interesting, but we didn't get that. Anyway, Ricky grows up and eventually turns to murder as a form of vigilante justice. He happens upon a girl who's being assaulted by her boyfriend and runs him over with his own car. So that was a funny scene there. You get a scene where Ricky finds a gangster and he stabs him with an umbrella and then opens up the umbrella and it's the Resident Evil umbrella. You know, there's lots of cool, there's cool slasher scenes and there's kind of goofy slasher scenes. The guy he runs over with the car, he like goes back and forth and it gets kind of silly, you know? And there is sillier stuff later in this movie. We'll get to that in a minute. Ricky does eventually meet a girl, and they fall in love, but she's not in the future segments, so you know this is going to go terribly, and that does lead into one of the movie's more comedic scenes. He's going to a movie theater as a date with this girl, and when he's there, he's like, "What is this movie about?" And she goes, "Oh, it's about a guy who dresses up as Santa Claus and kills people, and they're watching the first Silent Night, Deadly Night." That's really weird. I should make a whole list of movies where the first movie is a movie in the sequel. I mean, this happens a lot in like Night of the Living Dead spin-offs, but where they're actually watching the first movie, that's really weird. Maybe this is how Ricky knew so much about it. Maybe the in-world explanation, maybe Billy's exploits were so famous that someone made a movie about him. It's kind of weird that Ricky didn't know about it up until now, but yeah, so they're watching the first movie, and in this scene, Ricky actually kills an annoying moviegoer who he's talking over the whole movie, and you get to see Ricky surprise the guy and start beating him up, and you see his little feet kicking. Clearly a comedic scene, it's like something out of a cartoon, but it's kind of weird, you know. Ricky and all his moments are unintentionally funny. You know that this was all written to be serious, and then you get scenes like the movie theater scene, which are definitely meant to be funny. So how much of this was meant to be funny, and how much wasn't? That's a little weird. But if you are fans of So Bad It's Good movies, there is a lot to like here. You know, like I said, the whole rampage, but really every line that Ricky delivers is always intense and always over the top. And it is kind of sad he only got half a movie, because I definitely could see more going on, you know, with this character and the way he delivers stuff. You know, it is kind of sad that it's only half a movie, because it is just so over the top and intense. But anyway, this is of course going to build to a big climax, and then eventually we will get an actual Christmas section at the end of the movie. And the ending bits are really fun when it's new footage and you get to see Ricky, you know, cutting loose and being just over the top and insane. This guy's always on fire. He's always a few minutes away from exploding. And it is interesting. It is kind of sad that a truly good movie did have a so bad it's good sequel. And I would be really interested if we ever did, you know, not that anyone would go and, you know, remake Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 as a serious movie. But if they did, I'd be curious to see what they could do with it. But that being said, it is what we have. Might as well have a few laughs with it. But yeah, I am a little bit wishing it was as good as the first, you know? But hey, we did get the garbage day clip, right? Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. Christmas is kind of snuck up on me this year, as it always seems to do, but before December's over, I do want to review the last 3 of these movies. I haven't seen any of them yet. I am curious to watch them, but yeah, I'll try to get that before December is up, because, yeah, we're already about halfway through the month. That's crazy. But anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Christmas playlist, where you can see me review a bunch of crazy movies like Rare Exports and the first Silent Night, Deadly Night, and the remake, Just Silent Night. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Christmas playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.